How do you kill a king who is already dead? For the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a doorway to eternity. An afterlife was guaranteed, provided your name was remembered and your body was preserved. But what happens when an entire civilization decides to forget you? What if the most powerful man on earth, a living god, was so hated that his successors vowed not only to erase his memory, but to destroy his very soul for all time? This is the story of Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, and the epic 3,000-year-long quest to deny him his afterlife. His enemies tried to wipe him from history, chiseling his face from temples and striking his name from king lists. They believed they had succeeded, dooming him to eternal oblivion. But they made one crucial mistake, a mistake that would lead to one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of all time, centered on a single desecrated tomb and the unidentified body lying within it. They didn't count on us finding him. Before he was a ghost, Akhenaten was a revolutionary. Ascending the throne as Amenhotep IV, he presided over the wealthiest, most powerful empire the world had ever seen. But he harbored a radical, dangerous idea. Egypt worshipped a pantheon of gods, a complex system that had existed for millennia. Akhenaten decided to abolish them all. In their place, he elevated a single, universal deity, the Aten, represented as the physical disk of the sun. He declared himself the sole intermediary between this god and humanity, effectively making himself the central figure of all religious life. It was a move of unprecedented arrogance, a theological earthquake that shattered centuries of tradition and stripped power from the wealthy and influential priesthood of Amun-Ra. He wasn't just changing the gods, he was rewiring the very fabric of Egyptian society, and in doing so he signed his own death warrant, and perhaps the warrant for his eternal damnation. To cement his new world order, Akhenaten abandoned Thebes, the traditional religious capital of Egypt, and built a brand new, sprawling city in the middle of the desert. He called it Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten, known today as Amarna. It was a grand utopian experiment, built from scratch with stunning open-air temples aligned to the rising sun, opulent palaces, and homes for tens of thousands of followers who had moved there to embrace his new religion. For a brief, dazzling moment, Amarna was the center of the world. But this golden age was built on a crumbling foundation. The old priesthoods plotted in the shadows, the military grew restless, and the general populace was confused and alienated. When Akhenaten died, after 17 years on the throne, his dream died with him. His city was almost immediately abandoned, left to be swallowed by the desert sands, a ghost city for a ghost king. His revolution was over, but the revenge against him was just beginning. The pharaohs who followed, including his own son Tutankhamun, launched a systematic campaign to obliterate his memory. This was more than just political vengeance. It was a spiritual execution known as damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. To the Egyptians, to speak a person's name was to make them live again. To destroy their name was to destroy their soul. Hordes of workers were dispatched across Egypt with one mission: find every carving, every statue, every inscription bearing the name of Akhenaten and destroy it. His face was chiseled from temple walls, his name hacked out of cartouches. In the official king lists recorded by later pharaohs, his name and the names of his immediate successors were simply omitted as if they had never existed. They wanted to create a void in history, a black hole where the heretic once stood, and to complete the spiritual assassination, they needed to find his body. The first place to look was his intended tomb in Amarna. Akhenaten had prepared a magnificent royal tomb, carved into the cliffs east of his city. But when archaeologists finally entered it in the modern era, they found it had been ransacked in antiquity. The sarcophagus was smashed to pieces. Wall carvings had been defaced. Most importantly, the body was gone. Had his enemies dragged his mummy out to be destroyed? exposing it to the elements to ensure his soul had no vessel to return to. For decades, it seemed they had succeeded. Akhenaten was a phantom, his final resting place a mystery. It was assumed his remains were lost forever, until a strange discovery was made hundreds of miles away, in the most famous cemetery on Earth, the Valley of the Kings. In 1907, an archaeologist named Edward Aten stumbled upon a small, undecorated tomb that had been hastily sealed. It was designated Tomb K55. Inside was a scene of utter chaos. It held a bizarre jumble of funerary equipment from different reigns, much of it belonging to Akhenaten and his family. There was a desecrated shrine made for his mother, Queen T. There were canopic jars belonging to one of his wives, and in the corner lay a single rotting wooden coffin. The gold face had been ripped off, and the cartouches bearing the owner's name had been gouged out. Inside was a mummy, but whose was it? The mystery of KV55 ignited a century-long debate. The body was clearly royal, buried with a mix of Amarna period artifacts, but its identity was deliberately obscured. Early examinations of the skeleton were contradictory, with some experts claiming it was a woman and others an older man. Was this Akhenaten, moved here by loyalists trying to save his body from the destruction at Amarna? Or was it his mysterious successor, Smenkhkare? The tomb was a puzzle box with no clear answer. The final piece of the puzzle would only emerge a century later, with the advent of DNA technology. In a landmark study, scientists extracted DNA from the KV55 mummy and compared it to other royal mummies, including the famous Tutankhamun. The results were astounding. The DNA proved that the man in KV55 was the son of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye, and that he was the father of King Tut. This genetic profile fit only one person in all of history, the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten. After 3 millennia of uncertainty, the lost king had seemingly been found. But even this stunning revelation is not without controversy. Some Egyptologists still challenge the DNA findings, pointing to inconsistencies in the archaeological record and the initial osteological reports. They argue the identification is not as certain as claimed. So what was Akhenaten's ultimate fate? In a way, his enemies succeeded. They desecrated his tomb, destroyed his monuments, and made his own people forget him. They took his body from its grand home and dumped it in an unmarked grave, in a coffin stripped of its identity. According to their own beliefs, they had done everything necessary to deny him his eternal afterlife. And yet there is a profound irony. In their desperate attempt to erase him, they made him immortal. Their actions created a mystery so compelling that we are still obsessed with it thousands of years later. Akhenaten, the Forgotten One, is now one of the most famous and studied figures of the ancient world. His name is spoken daily, his story told and retold. Perhaps this is the ultimate afterlife he achieved, not in the golden fields of the Egyptian underworld, but in the permanent memory of human history. His enemies tried to condemn him to silence, but instead they gave him a voice that echoes through eternity.